Hi, Margie. Can you hear me? It's Matt Kirkpatrick.
Yes, I sure can.
Good morning. How are you?
Okay, how are you?
Good. Patricia Cartier is going to be coming to the meeting today, and she said that the link that I sent her isn't letting her in. Is there any way that you're able to invite her?
Yeah, let me give it a whirl.
I asked Chris Rotolo across the
Yeah, I
hallway.
can resend that to her right now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thanks, Margie.
Oh, you're welcome. Good morning, everybody. We should be starting in a few minutes.
Margie?
Yes.
How are you?
Okay, how are you, Vera?
Good. You know I'm here for MTFODL, right? So I have their statement and everything.
Oh, terrific. Okay. Yeah, that's
Okay.
wonderful. Thanks, Vera. Thank
All
you
right.
very much. Thank you. Good morning, everybody, and welcome. We're still waiting for a few of the key players before we begin. If you could bring up a copy of the agenda for yourselves, that would be very helpful. I'll have it open too. Good morning, everybody. We'll get started in about a minute or two.
Okay.
Mrs. Walker, how are we for the principal representatives? I can't quite tell. I think Mr. Olawson just joined. Is there?
Mr. Paulson's here.
Yep, so we're good.
Okay, all right. Okay, great.
Dr. Cartier is going to be joining as well.
Okay, terrific. Yes, thank you. Chris, was Dr. Cartier able to get in on the meeting link?
I resent it to her. I have not been able to contact her to find out if she's able to get in, but she does have the link.
Okay, I don't see her yet on the
She's not,
list.
yeah, she's not coming up until the graduation, so, I mean,
Okay.
start.
All right, so
If
we can
if
move
she
forward.
doesn't join in, Mr. Kirkpatrick can certainly fill us in.
All right, terrific. All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for taking a time out of your day to be here for our PIC meeting for March. Just a quick run over of the housekeeping rules. If you'd like to ask a question, feel free to use the chat. You may also go ahead and raise your hand, and alternatively, you can also unmute and ask the question yourself. It's entirely up to you. There's a link in the chat to the agenda if anybody doesn't have it brought up yet. And we'll get started. So let's get started with the implementation of Phase 6, the restart and reopening plan.
I could start at the elementary level, Miss Marion, if you want me to do that.
Absolutely.
All right. Good morning, everyone. We at the elementary level, we welcome back our second and third graders yesterday, and it's going really well. We have also, we're about 2 weeks into our LLD program, our special class programs going for the full day. Lunch was a little bit of an obstacle, but we've figured it out for the classes that we have, which is great. And we're happy to report on that end that we're now offering, starting this week, we started offering some hot lunch options for our students, because I know it may have been, I'm not sure if it was at this meeting or the board meeting where we were talking about options for lunch, but to have some hot food offered as opposed to a bagel or just a muffin sandwich, it was really good for our students. So we're excited about that. We're obviously moving forward, and hopefully that everything will work out for 4-5 on the 15th. Our cases are, I'll let Ms. Orozco talk about that, but they still continue to be mostly from outside of school at the elementary level, but we are really happy with our progress, and it's nice to have more breathing bodies in the buildings. So at the elementary level, it's going well. The one thing just to keep in mind, and this is an issue that I think has plagued our building and our buildings in our district for as long as even when I was a student here, is our drop off and arrival and dismissal procedures, which the key component to all of that, because when these buildings and facilities were built, some of them back in the 60s or earlier, children walked to school. Nowadays, children ride cars to school. Not many children are taking buses. And carpooling is down right now because we're not getting together with our neighbors. So as adults, we have to be patient. That our procedure might take a lot longer than it normally does. And we've been dealing with that at each building. I don't think there's a single building that is immune to that issue. And I think that as long as we practice patience, we should be okay. And realize that, listen, our goal here is safety, getting our children in safely, having our children be able to walk the property and feel safe, not have to worry about traffic or beeping horns. But outside of that, it's really going well. I'm happy with it. I know my colleagues would agree with me. So at the elementary, we're plugging away. So we're happy.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Paulson. Is there another, Mr. Olofsson, do you have an update? Oh, you're on mute, Mr. Olofsson.
There we go. So yeah, we met yesterday, myself, the middle school, other two middle school principals. And so reporting out, since we've gone to now, this is our second week of adding those additional 4 cohorts. So we could increase the amount of time students have in. All 3 buildings are reporting about 50 to 55% attendance in school at a time. So it's actually going quite well in terms of that. You know, it's yeah, I'll reiterate what Mr. Paulson said. That is a, you know, traffic flow is always an issue at every building. You know, buildings were not designed for the amount of traffic flow that we have, and we're experiencing that, a little bit of that at Thorn. It happens when there's poor weather anyway. But now we don't have a lot of kids taking buses because, you know, parents are still a little bit fearful of that. There isn't as much carpooling, so there's simply a lot more cars that are arriving in the morning. But with that said, you know, we sort of anticipated that on the middle school level in the beginning of the year, and we have more of a time in the morning. We have more of a window to get kids in. So we're getting kids in, you know, relatively quickly, even with temperature checks. So it's going pretty well. But the 4 cohort model is working fine. You know, and we'll take it from there. We're doing it in a 4-week cycle, and then we're going to reassess it on March 22nd to see where our numbers are, and then we'll see where we go from there. But again, we're about even from day one, I can tell you at Thorn, we were almost exactly at 50% capacity, which considering that we have 23% virtual learners, that was actually pretty good. You know, we were pretty much, you know, almost maxed out in terms of the amount of kids that should be in. So far so good. Also, lunches are going fine. Thompson does not have a program in the afternoon, any special self-contained special ed programs. Bayshore and of course Thorn does. Lunches, same thing as Mr. Paulson said. They're getting some more lunch options now, which is a good thing. So that's running relatively smoothly. I can tell you at Thorn, I have 3 self-contained programs. We're probably getting about anywhere between 18 and 22 or 23 students that are staying for the afternoon. We also discussed yesterday, we started to talk about graduation, and we discussed options with Mr. Kirkpatrick and Mrs. Walker. And, you know, we talked a little bit about the possibility of potentially having them at our own buildings. That presents a number of problems. I can tell you at Thorn, it would be beautiful in the back, but it's kind of a swampy area. And I have run events out there in the past, or I've attempted to. And even if it hasn't rained in several days, it could present a problem. Chairs like going into the mud and that type of thing. We're really looking into actually having it at the high schools on the turf. You know, we're not sure what the numbers are going to be yet in terms of outside capacity that's allowed. So we did discuss that. So, you know, the potential of maybe having Thompson at South, Thorn at North, and Bayshore, if we did have to go to 2 ceremonies, which we may have to do based on capacity, they could do, you know, for the kids going to North at North and the kids going to South at South. And then Thompson and Thorn potentially having, you know, 2 different ceremonies as well. I have my graduating class is going to be about 234. So last year, you know, when the graduations were occurring, I believe the capacity was 500. I know we're nowhere near that. We're way below that now. But if we use that as a benchmark, with 234 for me, I wouldn't be able to have 2 parents, which would necessitate, you know, we would certainly probably try to have 2 ceremonies, I would think. Thompson has about 330, I believe. So we looked into all those. We're exploring those options now, and we'll continue to see, we'll see how that goes.
Okay, we have a couple of questions in the chat. One, we have, so reassessment at March 22nd, does that mean children all virtual wouldn't have the next roll-in option until March 29th?
So March 22nd for the middle school, that option is actually March 15th district-wide. When I said March 22nd, we started our sort of this new rotation that we're doing with the 4 cohorts. We actually started that on February 22nd, and we wanted to do that, give that a month, so we would go through the entire cycle of all 4 cohorts, and that would give, and then we were going to reassess the numbers. But in terms of the opportunity to go in person, that's a district-wide thing, which is March 15th.
Okay. And one more question. Thompson has no LLD classes staying for the full day.
Correct.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I know Bayshore does.
Bayshore has the autism program. They have an LLD program, and at Thorne, we have multiple disabilities, behavioral disabilities, and LLD.
Okay. Okay. And is there another principal rep who's going to give an update at the high school? Let's see, at the high school level, or?
Mr. Kirkpatrick, has Dr. Cartier joined us yet?
I think she's having a hard time getting on. I'm actually trying to call her and Mr. Letson right now, who's going to be speaking. So I'm
Do they
trying
have to be let in, maybe? Are they?
Maura,
They're
did you
not
see
even,
anybody the person told them in the waiting
They are
room?
not appearing in the room to be let in at all. They are not, they have not logged on. Does not look like.
Can you send them another link?
Well, here's Dr. Cartier now, so she should be
Okay.
entering the room. There she is.
Here she is.
And here's Mr. Letson.
Good morning. Good morning, Dr. Cartier. Just in time. You're next on the up at bat, as it were.
Give us an update on the reopening plan. How's it going at the high schools?
Oh, you're still on mute, Dr. Cartier.
Okay, here I am. Everything's going very smoothly here at High School North with our reopening plan. Phase 6, things are going very well. And any particular questions that people may have? I mean, the cohorts are coming in. We're running the mandated drills. Teachers, have set up all the necessary seating charts and everything that they need. We're doing some interventions for anybody that's struggling and needs additional supports through the after-school learning hours or any other programs that we can offer them. So we're waiting for the next phase, 6B.
All right, terrific. Are there any questions before we move on to student attendance as to how phase 6 is going for the different districts?
Margie, I just wanted to add really quickly to Mr. Lawson's comments about graduation at the high school level. We've started working with administrators at the high school to price out stages, tents for medical and administrators, obviously chairs, and any other supplies that we would need to hold the graduation on our football field. Obviously, we haven't committed to anything solid yet, but we were able to facilitate very successful graduations at both high schools last year on the field. And I can tell you from personal experience, the majority of feedback that I received from parents in June and early July was very positive related to having students graduated on their own football field. So as we get more information, we'll share that with PIC, but right now we're in the planning stages and we are getting quotes for those materials.
Yes.
All right. And we do have a few questions, starting with, is there any concern about virtual high school kids having easier time with tests versus in-person kids? Have you seen any differences on the grades and performance on the tests between virtual and in-person?
The teachers have been creating assessments such that it is more open-ended questions so that it's not something that would be easy maybe for somebody to look up and answer. And if in fact, many of the teachers in the different departments, because we just had a meeting last week, are allowing students open resources, whether they're in class or they're at home taking the test. So they are leveling the playing field for both the remote and in-person learners.
Okay. And can we get an idea of the percentage of in-person kids at South and North?
For us, I would say it was about 46 to 48% of the students are in person. We had roughly 667 students, cohort A, maybe 680 some students for cohort B, out of a group of 1,450, so a little less than half. So it would be 750 would be half or a little under that. So about 46 to 48%.
Okay. And do we have anybody who could give us a ballpark figure on South, or is that, that's for North, correct, Dr. Cartier?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Do we have anybody?
Yeah, I can, when we, got the results of the selection form, high school South was about hovering right around about 50% of the students, because that was the benchmark in order to determine if they're coming in or not. So I don't have the actual numbers of the, kids on site present right now. But when we did receive the selection forms, we were hovering right about 50%.
Okay. And what is the time frame, if any, that the length of day at the high school or at any level will be lengthened to make lunch available? I know my Bayshore student would love to have lunch, to make lunch available.
Let me take that one. We don't have a set date. We are working on a plan. We're starting on a plan right now, but we've planned every stage ahead of time. You can't just say, okay, we're going to go now and plan it. So every stage we went to, we had to do pre-planning, but this stage requires an immense amount of pre-planning, including hiring people. We are looking at perhaps hiring some staff to help at lunch with supervision, because there's not going to just be a cafeteria with students in. We know that there's going to have to be multiple locations, classrooms, whatever. We don't know where they are yet. We haven't gotten to that point of the stage, but we do know that we're looking at potentially hiring, some staff to do that supervision. And hiring staff takes time, background checks, everything. So we're going to have to start that process. Also, the lunch service, Whitson's, they're on a much smaller crew right now. And they are going to have to, rehire their staff. So this is a process that we're getting started right now. We don't have all the solutions and we don't have a date, but we're getting started so that when the time is right, we will be prepared and we will have a plan. So I know that makes some people uneasy and that makes other people very happy. But it is our next phase after phase 6. It's not a phase. It was just an action that was going to take place at some point during one of the phases, as we move through our plan, when we were able to do so. So we're getting closer and closer to being able to do that. But right now we're focusing on just completing phase 6. And so it will be sometime after we complete phase 6, which is pretty soon. We'll be through phase 6. So,
Okay.
Or mostly through phase 6. If we're almost there and the time's right, we might be able to do those lunches too.
Okay. So basically, once we get through this, then you'll be able to take a look at concerns such as if a parent isn't comfortable with the kids having lunch in school, or, when the timing would be right for beginning a full lunch program.
There is an immense amount of planning that has to go into this due to the constraints that we're under with our guidelines and our facilities and our staffing. So it's a lot of problems to solve, but we started solving them and we do think it's doable. We just have to get through our plan and make sure that the time is right, because students will be taking masks off to eat inside. We can't have every student outside eating. We'd have to hire like 7 tents or more for every school to get all our kids outside to eat. So students will be inside the building with their masks off. So we have to make sure they're social distancing. And, that's as we add more students to the building, that becomes less and less, easy to do. And so we're coming up with solutions. So we'll get there. We're working on it. We just don't have any date right now.
Okay. And I guess you'll cover the topic. There was a concern here if the parent wanted to opt out of the kid participating in a lunch program. I don't know how the logistics of how they would.
We haven't gotten to that point in the plan at all, but it is something that, we'll look to see if we can get done. You know what I mean?
Okay.
But our plan is really just starting.
Okay. All right. Terrific. And Denise, did you want to ask a question?
I just want to back to the question regarding evening the playing field for the high school's kids tests taking in school versus, I know this has come up a number of times. So just, I appreciate looking at, I know teachers are allowing open materials, but there's a collaboration that goes on with the virtual students. And to my son's point, in the real world, you're collaborating, which, so I guess that's not necessarily a bad thing, but for the students that are in the classroom, they are not able to collaborate. So I know this is case by case and different subjects or, different tests, but please keep sort of a pulse on that. Because I know for, a lot of these students who are trying to remain competitive, but want to be in school, there's, definitely a difference going on.
Okay. I don't know, did anyone want to address what Denise had to say, or?
I'll just add that the assessment piece is such an important part of what teachers are trying to figure out right now. I think it's made us as educators examine how we deliver our assessment practices. And the only true way to keep students they're more aware of their technology ability than we are. And the only really way to get them to stop from sharing answers or looking at answers is for us to try to come up with assessment practices that try to, intrinsically motivate them and check for their understanding. So we're working on it as a group of administrators to try to come up with those practices. These are conversations that we've had, Mrs. Thompson, and we are aware of it. It's just that we're trying to stay ahead of the students, which isn't always easy.
No, absolutely. No, I understand. Just another question with regards to phase 6. The big thing I'm hearing both at the middle school and the high school level is just, it's so quiet. And I think there's, a sense the kids don't feel like they can talk with the people next to them, or, I don't know what's going on. And it's almost a little sad that, they, I guess, I don't know if they're told they can't speak with each other, or there's an inability to sort of, collaborate on different things. But I don't know, I guess maybe it's just a comfort level as more and more kids are in. So I just wanted to be aware of that. And I think the high school is ready to move on from yoga for gym.
Mrs. Thompson, being a middle school principal for 11 years, quiet is good.
It is, but mentally.
No, I know. I really, truthfully though, you know what it is too, like when they're in the hallways, they have masks on. It is quiet. It's just, I just feel like the whole atmosphere sort of lends itself to that. It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
But I see it even in the hallway where kids are usually conversing a lot, but we're still trying to maintain social distancing. And yeah, it is. It's a sad part of this, to be honest with you.
Mr. Paulson could attest to this. I've had in my new position, I have the ability to go into buildings at all 3 levels, and I do so often. The elementary students are a little more resilient with regard to the mask wearing. And they're acting more like 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds. And the high school students, whatever it is, I think that the way they're handling the pandemic and social distancing and mask wearing is a little bit different than the innocent young students who are doing it at the elementary level. So I can just tell you, walking around the high school, it's very different than it was, before the pandemic last year. And I think that, until we get to a point where we feel a little safer, I'm not sure how it's going to be. I think we have some ground to cover still.
Okay.
And I just want to address the PE class, because I know the mom mentioned about yoga. I know that the different PE grade levels do different activities. I know they were playing basketball, maybe some of them were doing yoga, but I think there was a rotation. They had different activities. I don't think everybody in the gym class was doing yoga.
I don't know. I know he's been doing yoga this whole time. So
What grade is he in? You're saying
10th
grade. Okay.
We do have some questions in the chat that are specific to lunch. Let's see, we have, are there specific numbers or metrics we need to hit to pull the trigger on lunch in school? And what determines when the time is right for that? And we also had a question about tents, the cost of renting tents versus hiring additional staff. I don't, okay.
Yeah, I'll do the tents first. I see that one first. Tents, even huge tents, are not the best solution in our opinion. They don't really fit that many students in social distancing. And if it's bad weather, if there's any wind at all, you can't put students under a tent. If there's rain, it's gonna come in the sides, so you're gonna have to concentrate in the middle. That really even reduces the amount. We don't want temporarily to have to say today, I don't know what we're gonna do for lunch because it's raining out, or this week. So we're finding inside solutions wherever possible. There may be schools that we do have to have them, but for the most part, it's a solution we're trying not to use because it's not going to always be available to us based on weather. And the sizes, they're really not, they're certainly about the size of a classroom, even bigger ones, unless you get like a big circus tent. So the ones that we see, the ones that restaurants use that you sit under, they're pretty much the size of a classroom. And so, we have classrooms. So that's what we're going to try to be using. Of course, on nice days, if a class wants to go outside and eat and stuff like that, that would be fine, but, so maybe some tables, but to say that a tent would be there for every single day when needed, that's our concern. So that's why we're trying to find indoor places to eat. Let's see, what was the other question? Oh, the metrics. We don't have specific benchmarks, because one school could be at 20, but it's not of a concern because we know exactly where the person got it, or whatever. We know what's going on. We either can carve out what we need to quarantine to make sure it doesn't spread any further, or we don't need to quarantine or carve out at all because it was outside sources and the person wasn't there to wasn't there while they were there's a 2-day look back. When you're positive, you'll do a 2-day look back. Sometimes that 2-day look back, the person wasn't there because they weren't feeling good, they didn't come in, that type of thing. So, or they were quarantined because they were close contact. So it's not specific metrics, it is the details, and it's a discussion with our health department, with our school physician. It's what metrics, risk level we're in as a community, our region, and our region is still in the high risk level, but we are very close to going back to the moderate, which changes things for us. Because there's different guidelines you follow for certain things based on whether you're in the high risk or the moderate list. Quite frankly, the last week we have seen a tick up in our schools of number of cases, but we watch the details of them. But even a tick up just kind of concerns us because we had gone way down. We're hoping that this is just a little bump and then we'll go back down. Could lunch come back at different times for different schools? Probably more, that's something we talk about, but it's probably more of maybe by level, like elementary and then middle and high, or whatever way we decide to do it, or maybe all at once. It depends. It depends on the plan. Like I said, we're just starting, but we know we have to start because we know that there's certain things that take time that have to get done. Have we seen any data from other districts that have brought back lunch at high school and middle school levels? Have their case numbers gone up? I haven't seen, they don't report anything like that. I have talked to other superintendents. We've called, our administrative team have called other schools and talked about what they do and how they do it. A lot of other schools have, different spaces in their schools. A lot of schools have less students per the size of their building. So it's kind of hard to compare, but in general, I haven't heard that it's caused anybody's had to really pull back because of it. But that's just anecdotal. I really don't know, but we're going to do it in the way that the guidelines say, in a safe way. And so, when we do go to lunch, we're going to be pretty confident that that's not going to cause any upset.
Okay. And we do have an observation about the quiet. Advisory in middle school is inconsistent with rules. Some say they cannot talk at all, and there's a need. The parent asked if there was could we add some social component? I guess. So I'm not advisory. I think that's the free period, or.
Mr. Lawson, do you want to answer that?
So advisory is, it's not really a free period. It was designed for students to, work on sort of personalized learning activities and things of that nature. It's obviously sort of changed with everything going on, but there's definitely opportunities. I know teachers are actually, when they're in advisory, they're allowing students to converse and that type of thing. That's certainly something that we can talk about with our those who are doing advisory, the staff members, that if we could add some sort of social component or that type of thing.
Okay, all right, terrific. In the interest of time, why don't we move on to student attendance with Mr. Ranella?
Sure. So as we continue to try to transition back to what school was like prior to March 13th of last year, I think it was this morning I heard it was actually 1 year anniversary of the first reported case was today, which kind of is mind blowing. But as far as student attendance, I digress. I apologize. The student attendance is concerned at the high school, elementary, and middle school level. Again, as we transition back to our normal school day, we are also trying to transition back our attendance expectations as well. We had done a really good job of kind of honing in on our attendance, and our chronically absent numbers had decreased greatly. And we just want to continue to make sure that attendance is emphasized. So when we started phase 6, and this not only does it relate back to the chronic absenteeism, but also as far as teachers are concerned and planning, it's really important that if students have the intention of going to school and sitting in the chair and being in the classroom, that they're there, because that does have a big impact on how teachers are preparing their lessons. So we are emphasizing the attendance piece more now that we're into phase 6, trying to eliminate, students deciding, that morning that they're not going to attend class. So that's really what the attendance piece was when we moved into phase 6, is just trying to increase the accountability. That doesn't mean that if a student, if a family had a trip planned and then they went on that trip, that they were going to automatically be moved back into virtual. I believe Mrs. Walker spoke about that at the board meeting, kind of cleared that up for everybody, that they need to work with their building administrators as far as that is concerned. The move back to virtual, or for those students that are just, like I said earlier, waking up that morning and deciding that they're not going to come to class because they were up late last night playing video games or for whatever reason. Those are the types of incidents that would, after 3 of them, necessitate a move back to virtual learning. But building administrators are being very flexible in working with families, like I said, for those planned vacations, or in those instances where students might have to quarantine. Those, again, would not necessitate a transition back into virtual learning. Mr. Kirkpatrick, do you want to add anything? You've been working very closely with the building administrators on that.
So I just wanted to reiterate your part about flexibility, Mr. Ranella. We understand the importance of being flexible right now. We're not encouraging parents to send students in who don't feel well. We're not asking for doctor's notes. Like Mr. Ranella said, we've communicated with counselors and administrators about, the need to be flexible. These 3 cumulative days are for students who are just in and out for no reason. If your child is not feeling well, or you had an issue at home, or if you went on vacation, or if you had to quarantine, or if there was another personal issue that you communicate to a counselor or an administrator, we're obviously not going to count those as the 3 cumulative days. As Mr. Ranella mentioned, we just want stability in the classroom for both students and staff members. So this, the transient student who's in and out is just creating an unstable learning environment. So we're trying to sort of eliminate that. You also need to know that counselors and administrators will be reaching out to parents who might have students who are in jeopardy of these 3 cumulative days prior to that point. So there will be some sort of communication that occurs before that you're told, that you can't come back. I also want to mention that if a student is supposed to be present, but they are out for whatever reason, listen, we typically don't allow vacations during the school year, but we're vacations right now. We're going to accept those, quarantines, things like that. But if you sign on when you're supposed to be on-site present, you're not going to be marked as an absent. So a letter is not going to be generated from the school. It's not going to affect loss of credit from the high school. We have a different code that we're going to put in, so it's not reported as a traditional absence. We're taking into consideration the fact that the student shouldn't, quote unquote, be dinged for circumstances that I just mentioned. Are there any other questions related to attendance? I
Yeah.
think the flexibility piece is going to be the important one for us.
Yeah, there's a question in the chat. Denise, do you want to ask the question? Because I'm not exactly sure if I'm going to phrase it properly.
Sure. I just had a question regarding at some point, and I don't know if this, I assume this is a Department of Health question, or do you see or have heard any of this happening, coming down the pipeline about testing negative out of quarantine when you're exposed at school? So what, a student who's sitting, a few feet away with a mask on behind plexiglass, the person next to them tests positive, they're forced to quarantine, but they're showing no signs of symptoms after a few days if they got a negative test. Because what we're hearing is an athlete who had a big game or competition that later that week is now forced to be home when they're following all the proper protocols. So I'm just curious at what point, because we're hearing whispers of, hey, spring athletes should just, go virtual so that they're not subjected to that, which I think that's a big problem because we want the kids in school. So I had heard from someone that, in another district that that might be coming down the pipeline, but it would be great to get to that point where a student could test negative out of quarantine.
So if you don't mind, I'll take this one. So the guidelines that we follow come down a path. And so what typically happens is that the CDC will change their recommendations and their guidelines for quarantine. Then the New Jersey Department of Health will consider that guidance and those new procedures, and the New Jersey Department of Health will decide if they want to recommend it for New Jersey in general. Then they decide if they're going to recommend those guidelines or similar or different ones for schools. So right now we're following the New Jersey Department of Health guidelines for schools, which are not the same as every other citizen in New Jersey. So our travel guidelines are different, our quarantines are different. And to make it all the more confusing, we also have different guidelines at each level of risk. So right now, we've been mentioning this orange level of risk. So right now we're in this orange level of risk, which says that our base quarantine for close contact is 14 days. No testing out of it, no exceptions, it's 14 days. But if we're down to yellow, the guidelines suggest that we could follow a 10-day quarantine as long as that person doesn't have any symptoms. And then there may be talk of testing out of that quarantine. But right now, because we're at that orange level of risk, the Department of Health does recommend that for anyone in schools, that we continue to follow that 14-day quarantine. We received another confirmation email yesterday that the Department of Health in Monmouth County recommends that whenever possible, we do follow that 14. So, right now we're saying at the orange level, we have to follow that 14-day. And if we do drop down into yellow, then we'll see if the Department of Health is going to recommend that we can do the 10-day instead. But that's why you do see different guidelines being followed or being recommended by the CDC, and then at New Jersey, and then finally at schools. So there has been chatter about whether or not the Department of Health is going to change the guidelines for schools. As of right now, they haven't. From I think our last update was the end of January. But like I said, there is a difference in orange and yellow, and cross your fingers, we've been seeing the state turn more yellow than orange. So we'll see if that trend continues and that we would then be able to follow the yellow guidelines.
Speaking of procedures, if a child needs to go virtual on an in-person day, who should they communicate that to? The parent should communicate that to the main office, guidance, leave a message on a school voicemail. Is there an in-place procedure?
I would say that the best thing to do would be contact the main office and send the counselor an email as well, depending on what level you're at. Obviously, if you're an elementary student, contacting the main office is fine. If you're a secondary student, I would cover myself double. I would send an email to counselor or call a counselor and contact the main office as well.
Okay.
I also want to encourage parents, Margie, if they have questions related to attendance, they can certainly reach out to building administration. And if they can't answer those questions, parents have been contacting me after they talk to the building principal. So I'm here to listen to questions as well.
Terrific. Thank you, Mr. Kirkpatrick. Any more on student attendance before we move on to the school calendar update? Okay, before we go to high school graduation, I don't see, can we address the concept of snow days? And like how they work or how they don't, like for this year, they didn't actually happen.
Well, we actually did have a snow day.
Yeah, well, we had one.
This is, this year, because we're in a health state of emergency, we are able to use virtual days. When we are no longer in a health emergency, we will not be able to use snow days unless the law is changed. And there is talk about changing that law, but there's been no movement at all on it. So if after June, we go into September and the health emergency is no longer in place, there will be no snow day, virtual days next year. So they would all have to be, a day off. This year we've been using virtual days. Our school, we didn't want to it gets pushed off into the summer every time we take a snow day. And there have been 7 days that we've had to close our buildings because of snow. We would be almost at June 30th had we used snow days. We used one snow day when we had a number of days in a row of virtual days. It was all A days. It just those students, it wouldn't have been a good situation. So for one of those days, we stayed right in the middle. And we were hoping it was the end, but unfortunately there were more days to come. We did do a snow day. One day we did do an early dismissal with no afternoon hours. It was the second day after we had that, foot of snow or more. It was to, just let everybody dig out. We thought we could get to school the next day. We wanted to ensure everybody was dug out, sidewalks were cleaned, but there was just so much snow. The streets were so narrow. The bus companies were telling us that, it was dangerous for them to go into the narrow, side streets. I drove around every time I drove around town a couple of times, after each storm. The bus stops and the sidewalks weren't cleared in many instances, and it's only because there was so much snow to remove. It took a long time. So that third day, that's when we did a snow day. But hopefully we are past that cycle. I mean, I know there's always a chance of snow. Some of our worst snowstorms have come in March, but I'm hoping that we're done with that. From now on, we probably, unless there's a really long snowstorm that we have to be out for a couple of days, we will be using the virtual days. Next year, you will see on the calendar, there's no virtual days built in at all because we don't know that they're even going to be available for us. Like, for example, election day this year was a virtual day. It's just a day off next year. We weren't, either scenario that we used, whether we have the whole week off or not, it was not going to be a day where students were present. So I don't know if there's any, I hope I answered that question for you.
Yes, I think you absolutely did. Okay, so let's move on to high school graduation.
I think we already did the graduations, right? We already talked about that in the update. For some reason, it just kind of got all melted in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I think it was
Okay.
about the middle school.
Okay, let's do that.
No, the middle school, I think, was the only one that was talked about for graduation.
Was it middle? Oh,
okay. I thought Matt, do you want to say something about graduation? Because
I think you talked about the football fields. Yeah, so I thought that was high school. That's my mistake. Sorry.
I touched on the high school as well. Like I said, we're looking at the football fields. We started to get quotes on chairs and stages and tents. Obviously, our sound systems are in good shape. The feedback I got last year about running the ceremonies on the football field was all very positive. We're not quite sure what capacity is going to look like, but obviously it's our hope to get as many of the students on the field as we can at one time. We'll share information as we continue to plan. Really, much of the next few months is going to be geared around planning for graduations at the high school. Obviously, it's a big undertaking, but the fact that we did do it on the field last year will allow us to successfully, implement it again this year. I can tell you from a personal standpoint, I will be facilitating graduation at High School South. I have a long-standing relationship with the seniors there. I've had many of them since 6th grade at Thompson. So I look forward to that. And I know Dr. Cartier and I will work closely as we continue to plan for high school graduation.
I see the question about dates. We will have dates set by the board meeting, by the workshop. We'll let everybody know what the dates are. They will be that last few days of school, we have to, we know we're going to have to give a rain date. We know that, we have 5 graduations to do, and we have to have a rain date. So, and one of the things with the field, which, it's nice to have it, in our own backyard, just to have, you know what I mean? The planning, it makes the planning so we can plan it around dates that are more convenient for us rather than for a venue, although I love Monmouth University too, that was a great venue. Where was I going with this? But at any rate, there's a lot to consider. There's when you're on the field, that turf gets very hot in the sun. It's a good 15 degrees warmer on the turf than it is, on regular grass. So we try to get these done early in the day, before the sun has a chance to really heat up the field. In the evenings, it's still warm, and you run the chance of more of a chance anyway of hitting thunderstorms. Thunderstorms usually aren't in the morning. They usually pop up in the afternoon, evening, early evening. So we're going to try to get them done earlier in the day. So, we don't have, set dates, but we are looking at, that last week of school with earlier in the day graduation.
Now that's for this, what about middle school? Is that going to cover middle schools as well, or?
Yeah, it would be under the same parameters. We usually do middle school before the high school, just usually, but like I said, we're just in the planning stages. This is just very preliminary information. Don't anybody make set dates on this yet. Well, we'll have them for the workshop for you though. Okay, we'll be at that point in a couple weeks to be able to let everybody know.
Okay, and what about 5th grade graduation? How are we going to? I know last year it was bittersweet. I don't know if the attention is going to be the same on the 5th graders as there is on the middle and high schoolers.
That's always been a little different, and that's really always been building based. So that will remain building based at this point. Like Mr. Kirkpatrick said, at this time, I think the outdoor gathering limit's only 25. We're hoping, like it did last year, go to 500 at least. We're hoping it goes to more, but at least 500. So like us, we're planning for the graduations with, the hope that we'll be at 500. If not, we'll have to scramble and, do more graduations with fewer, students at each. But, the elementaries will start planning for something also. Outdoors, obviously, and, hopefully it'll be able to be pulled off, The problem last year is by the time they raised that limit to 500, was so close to the end of the school year. It was really very hard for our schools to pivot to do, any kind of event. So this year, knowing that these numbers do change on a dime with public, support and, kind of prodding the governor, then, so we'll hope for that and plan for that.
Okay. And there's a question about prom for the high schools. Is there going to be any sort of opportunity for that to happen?
The high schools are meeting this afternoon at 2:30 this afternoon to discuss the proms, junior and senior proms, meeting.
And what they're doing the same thing. They're going to start planning with the idea that the constraints that are in place today, social distancing, mask wearing, will be in place, but hopefully the gathering limit will be increased. And if we plan for that and we're prepared for that, then as long as the gathering limit is there, we can pull it off. Whether we pull it off with the constraints that are in place now, if they're still in place then, we'll have that opportunity. Or if they pull back the constraints, it's much easier just to say, okay, we don't have to worry about masks and social distancing at this event. But it'll be planned with masks and social distancing so that we can do it in case those constraints are not loosened. And I was talking to one of the advisors who was saying the kids have come up with some really great ideas, ingenious, to be able to have an event that would be meaningful to them and still have the social distancing. So that is, that's good. So they're all working, they're going to share ideas, and, hopefully by the time we get to do this, we'll be able to do this.
All right, terrific. And now let's go on to post-spring break learning for this year.
Not sure what that meant.
Well, I think the question was, are we going to do any virtual time after spring break?
No, we're not going to have a virtual week after spring break. If parents do go on vacation, there's the quarantining, there's just like Mr. Kirkpatrick said, notify the school so that, they'll know that your child is going to be virtual, but students who didn't go on vacation can come and be in person.
Okay.
So it's almost like a, yes, there is a post-spring if you went on vacation, and no, there's not if you didn't go on vacation. Or if there's any other reason you should quarantine.
Okay. All right, terrific. All right, let's move on to No Place for Hate, that the high school initiative of Mr. Letson. Is he here with us?
Yes.
Okay, there he is.
Yes, hi, good morning, everyone. It's nice to see everybody. It's my pleasure to be here at the meeting and just to say a few words about the No Place for Hate program. I just want to start off by saying that I'm speaking for the Diversity Club. I am not the advisor. Okay, Nina D'Urso and Myra Velasquez are the co-advisors for the Diversity Club, and they are attempting to implement the No Place for Hate program. And it's my pleasure to be here today to support them and to describe a little bit about that program. I don't think there'll be too many questions, but if there are, I hope I'll be able to answer them, okay? Now, the ADLs, most of us know, it's a leading anti-hate organization, and it was founded in 1913 in response to escalating climate of anti-Semitism. But today, it continues to fight all forms of hate with the ultimate goal, okay, is a world with no group or individual suffers from bias, discrimination, or hate. The No Place for Hate program is presently in 1,600 schools throughout the country. It is a student-led program that helps all members of the school community combat bias, bullying, and it helps schools to create a more equitable and inclusive climate. And it's individually designed to work for each school and what that school's need may be. It engages students and staff in a dialogue and active learning on the topics of bias, bullying, and inclusion, and allyship, or being an ally to someone that matters the most in our school and in our community. There's 4 phases to the approach, and presently I know the Diversity Club is in phase 2. The first phase is to form a committee and select a coalition of students and a minimum number of faculty members, and that's already been done with the Diversity Club and their co-advisors. And the second one is to sign the pledge. So students and staff have to sign the No Place for Hate pledge as proof of their school-wide commitment to doing their part to make our school No Place for Hate school. So, we're still in that stage, and we have to show proof that we have 75% of the student body's buy-in for that, and that's a pretty large number. We're on our way. It's a little bit more difficult this year with our schedule. There's a couple of ways that we are doing that through email, through our Navion system at the high school level. We're able to do that through our morning announcements and posting the link to the pledge in various Google Classrooms. So we're hoping to get the word out. The last count we had as of yesterday was a little under 600. So we're hopeful to get more. And I'm hopeful that we can play a short video, okay, that the Diversity Club did put together that was emailed out to all students in our building that described the No Place for Hate pledge. And here it is.
Can anybody else hear it? I
Yeah,
can't
Chris,
hear
there's no audio. I think you have to share it with, yeah, I think you have to share it with the meeting audio. Yeah, no, it's still, it's something to do with the share option. Do you want to take a look
Right.
at it? We'll
Try
come back.
Oh, hold on one second here. I might
Okay.
have this. Okay, let's try this one more time. I apologize for the.
That's okay. Lovely young people.
Students, we've all just taken the No Place for Hate pledge. We're very excited to invite you all to join us in signing the No Place for Hate pledge for Middletown High School South.
What is No Place for Hate?
The No Place for Hate anti-bias program is developed by the Anti-Defamation League, which prioritizes student voices as a means of achieving a school climate where all students feel empowered.
No Place for Hate is a collaborative, student-driven school initiative designed to combat bias, bullying, and hate in a way that best suits the unique needs of individual schools.
The movement promotes a safe and inclusive environment in which students of all backgrounds can thrive. Together, we can commit to challenging bias, celebrating our differences, and championing justice.
By earning this No Place for Hate designation, Middletown High School South would join a nationwide movement of over 1,600 other schools who have pledged to prevent the escalation of hate.
In a No Place for Hate school, students are empowered and develop the skills to combat bias and bullying.
Teachers are supported in addressing challenging topics and connecting with other educators across the country.
And administrators commit to maintaining a school environment where all students can thrive by increasing students' sense of safety and belonging. As a No Place for Hate school, Middletown High School South would work together to ensure a school climate of acceptance and inclusion where all stakeholders develop a greater respect for differences.
Ultimately, the No Place for Hate designation identifies our school as a place of acceptance. Why sign the pledge?
We hope that you will take a pledge against hate and help Middletown High School South earn a No Place for Hate designation.
By signing this pledge, you will be taking the first steps into leading our school into an environment free of prejudice and discrimination. This movement cannot succeed without the help of our students. We are the change.
Okay, that was wonderful. Thank you, Chris, for playing that. You know, I've seen a million of those videos, but I can tell you that each one that I see just makes me smile so wide and just fills my heart. I got to tell you. You know, so you know the kids are trying to get the message out. The third step is to implement 3 activities. School-wide activities to enhance students' understanding of diversity, bias, social justice, and inclusion, and to foster equity and harmony in our school. And after that, they have to document those activities on forms that the ADL does provide. And then the last phase is to submit the paperwork, which gets reviewed and hopefully accepted. And if we pass to be a No Place for Hate school, we get a banner that we can display in a prominent area. And it's kind of a cool banner, you know, I kind of like it. Hopefully we get it. But that's a brief summary of the No Place for Hate program. Are there any questions?
No, we just have one comment. That's awesome. And I have to add, that's awesome. Wonderful.
I actually do have a quick question, if it's okay. This is Rachel Konopka. Is this a program that's only available at the high school level? And is North pursuing it possibly? I recognize that this was a South-driven initiative. Could it happen at North? Are there plans to have it happen at North? And could it potentially even bubble down to the middle school level, I'm wondering? Because I think getting this type of message out to our students as early as possible would be incredible. I mean, for kids to be able to take this pledge as middle schoolers and then kind of re-inaugurate themselves as high schoolers, I think would be amazing.
I guess I'll go first. To answer your question, it is a program that any middle school or high school could implement. And also, that being said, this is one of several type of programs, and I know that all of our schools do something in regards to, you know, a program to implement, you know, certain measures and pledges and things of that nature, you know, to send out this important message. But yes, other schools are able to implement it.
Yeah, I'll just chime in there too. I know on the middle school level, we all do various different programs. Last year at Thorne Middle School, we did Rachel's Challenge, which was similar. It was students taking a pledge, and it was basically the same message. So I just wanted to chime in there.
The same with High School North, our SAC counselor, and also we have a diversity club, and they have several programs in place here.
Terrific. Thank you very much, Mr. Letson. I appreciate all the information. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Now we're going to go over to Devin, and we're going to talk about vaccines for teachers.
So we have taken a couple steps in order to get more of our staff vaccinated. We now have a partnership with the Visiting Nurse Association of Central Jersey, who is one of the larger suppliers of vaccines. They're not quite a mega site, but they do have a lot of vaccine availability. So what they are doing is they opened up a pre-registration link to our teachers. And then I have a list of staff members that when they complete that link and they are currently eligible to receive a vaccine because of either age or underlying medical condition, or they happen to be in that healthcare worker designation but haven't received a vaccine yet, that they are then scheduled for the next available appointment that VNA can give them. So in that process, we opened that up to staff members, I believe on Thursday of last week. And over the weekend through today, we will have had 86 of our staff members vaccinated in that very short time. So kudos and thank you to VNA for really, stepping up and helping out educators across the county. And then the next step is the governor announced yesterday that all educators, so it's pre-K through 12 educators and support staff members, are eligible to receive a vaccine as of March 15th. So we are starting to coordinate basically the same sort of system with VNA right now in order to get all of our staff registered so that when there are appointments available, that we will start coordinating that. There are other efforts that we're working on as well, trying to get more of our staff members vaccinated. But as of right now, those are the steps that we have been able to successfully do and implement for our staff members.
Okay, Danielle, did you have your hand up? I wasn't, it looks like Danielle Walsh.
Yes,
Okay.
I did. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry. There is also a website, New Jersey COVID Vaccine, that's helping with volunteers. I've been working with a lot of teachers to help them get vaccine appointments. The concern seems to be, is the administration going to be flexible when it comes to, hey, if I can get an appointment at 10 o'clock in the morning for one of these teachers, are they going to be flexible with substitutes to let the teachers go get the vaccines without being punished for it?
Danielle, it depends on our availability of subs, right? And advance notice, that will help us with the availability of to determine it. So if we can, we will.
Okay. The concern is there isn't advance notice, like with some of these. A lot of these, I don't know, anybody who's worked on these websites, if you get on one at 11 o'clock at night, you might get an appointment the next day for 1 o'clock, and that's what you get. There isn't, unless you're doing it through the VNA, which clearly you are, but for now, I think is the concern.
We can let them go. We have someone, then we will. Okay.
I can attest to that. That happened in my building, and I worked with that teacher and the subs I had available, and then just other staff to make sure that that room is covered, because our goal is to get them vaccinated if they choose.
Yeah. Agreed.
Okay, all right. Are there any other questions around teachers and vaccines? All right, let's move.
I'm sorry, Margie. I didn't click quick enough. This might be, total pipe dream, but is there any way to work with the VNA to have on-site clinics at one of the high schools that the teachers and staff could go to, even if it's in like the middle of the night?
We actually spoke about that. They're not doing any school sites. They're just not at this point. We offered, and we said, listen, we have the nursing staff to help. We have the space, and they have their sites, and that's what they're using. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, it would have been much more convenient. But we are like, there's competition to, let's put it that way, for these vaccines. We got in pretty quickly on the ground floor of this VNA partnership. We were, ahead of most of Monmouth County with this, but now the rest of it is catching up. So we were able to get like 86, as Mrs. Roscoe said, in the first like 4 days that we had. You know, it might slow down for a little bit now because now, like I said, there's more competition, but more vaccines are coming now. So it will soon, like probably within a week or so, speed back up and we'll start really seeing more and more. The teachers, I can tell you, that have gotten it so far are thrilled. You know, it's just a sense of relief for them. And, you know, so we want to keep going. We're looking at other avenues, and we did ask about, you know, having it at our school, but they're not doing it at schools.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mrs. Walker. Thank you very much. All right, let's move on to the weekly district newsletter. There were some concerns that not all of the schools are equally represented. So it'd be interesting to hear about the process of how the newsletter is created. Is there anyone who can speak to that?
Chris, are you on there? Because Chris actually is our editor.
I am on here, yes.
Elaborate a little bit, but he's he's 98%, actually probably 99. I look at it and make some suggestions and we talk about it, but he's the editor.
Thank you.
Yes, content for the newsletter is compiled by looking through social media posts, but primarily it comes from submitted content from faculty members, from administrators. If there's an event that takes place in the school, obviously we're a little less connected these days during COVID, so there's less travel from school to school, but I do ask that our school administrators kind of keep us tied in, send us information when they can, different things that are happening in school that they would like to have some light shed upon. Some schools are better at sharing that information than others. So, you know, you try to scan social media the best that you can to kind of keep tabs on everything. So I mean, the best way to do it, which again, our school level administrators understand, is to submit content directly to me or to Mrs. Walker, which eventually gets filtered down to me and is included. So that is primarily how it is pulled together. If anybody has any suggestions, we're always open to them of a better process, but that has been the process since we started this, 60 or so additions into this. So, so yeah, that is the process for the weekly newsletter.
And I just actually added it to we have a principals meeting on Thursday, so I just added that to our agenda to just remind everybody. You know, this year, everybody's mind is really not, it's been focused in different areas. So it's not a bad idea to refocus them on this.
Yeah, I think so. I think that it's a wonderful newsletter. I think you do a great job, Chris. I appreciate all the work you do. As an editor for a living, I know it's not an easy thing to do. Every issue is a struggle.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, Margie, I just wanted to unmute myself and reiterate, I'm so impressed with that newsletter. And I remember, you know, before we had the newsletter, we were always kind of saying, how could we learn more about what's going on in other schools? I think the job you've done with it is phenomenal. And knowing that you are basically doing it kind of as a one-man show on top of managing all of these meetings and all the tech stuff that has gotten so insane during COVID is remarkable. You're doing a tremendous job. So thank you very much, Chris.
It's my pleasure. You know, we try to keep everybody as connected as possible. And when there, you know, if there are wonderful programs going on in one school, you know, it's nice to promote it in others. Maybe we can, you know, replicate that in other schools and just make us a more tightly knit community than we are. So, which we already are. So, you know, but any sort of collaboration that we can have, it's always welcomed. If there are any school representatives, parent representatives, administrators who would like to, you know, just bring it to our attention, that would be greatly appreciated.
Okay, terrific. Thank you, Chris. Thank you very much. And there's kudos in the chat to you as well from Marguerite and Vera. They say thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it.
All right, in the interest of time, let's move forward to the BOE update. I turn it over to Jackie and Frank.
Hi, good morning, Margie. How are you?
Okay, how are you?
Good, good. Jack, I don't know if you wanted to jump in here with anything, or I can just take it over from here, whatever you like.
No, go ahead.
All right. All right. I'll start with Malone and McBroom. Miss Minuise has reached out to Michael Zuber and is awaiting a call back to schedule a date to meet up with him. Heading over to PRT meetings, I believe they will be starting to be organized the next week or two, mostly in regards to getting back to having lunches when that day does come. What else I want to speak about? Vaccinations, obviously, as we might have touched on already. In our legislative meeting about 2 weeks ago, we had invited Senator Declan O'Scanlan to the meeting. We spoke in detail about him trying to help us. And currently, I believe, and I could be wrong, Ms. Walker just tell me around 95 or 99% of all of our high-risk teachers have been vaccinated. And we will continue this process till all of our teachers are vaccinated. And as everybody's aware, March 15th now opens up for all teachers to be vaccinated, who choose, obviously. And we are pleased to be in the forefront and have received an early start on this. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Frank. Jackie, anything to add or?
No, just wanted to say thanks to Frank for all his hard work in getting that to happen. I think it was a huge step for our teachers and hopefully removes another obstacle to us continuing to get the kids back in school. So thank you, Frank, and Declan O'Scanlan, of course, as well. Thank you.
And I have a question from Rachel. Rachel, why don't you go ahead and unmute?
Sure. Thank you, Margie. I was just wondering if there's been any discussion about when we might be able to have in-person BOE meetings again for members of the community. I think the virtual platform has been amazing, and I think it's been awesome to see how many more people are participating. But I also selfishly feel like I get a lot more out of the meetings when I can kind of be there in person, and I think I can read people better and they can read me better, and I just appreciate the in-person aspect, kind of just like the kids going to school. So I'm curious if there's been any discussion about if and when we could open that back up while maintaining the virtual meetings, but allow parents and community members to attend at North again.
Rachel, I would invite you last month if I could. Yes, there is discussion going on about that. It's really more of a logistical thing at this point, to have the virtual and where we would be, and obviously with the sort of guidelines right now. And we really want to get the kids back in school. That's really our foremost, our most that we want to really achieve right now. So I don't want to ruffle any of the carts right now with, possible contamination with us and outside people coming into the building. So let's get the kids going right now. That's probably our main thing. And within the next month, we'll probably definitely be speaking about it even more.
What about going forward into the new school year? Because optimistically there will be a new school year. Have you considered the option of a hybrid version of the BOE meeting so that there will be more opportunity for attendance, as Rachel said?
I think that virtual, the virtual that we're doing right now with the hybrid, it's working. I think it is a good for people to, be online as well as in person. The whole problem, like I'm saying, is logistics of how that will actually play out and how it will work. So it's something we're going to look at actually. So,
and I'm sure Chris Rotolo can attest to this as well. The problem with doing a hybrid version is going to be audio. Having that many people in a room and trying to still have the audio streaming and have everyone heard is going to be very difficult. But I mean, we are working on it. I know many of the board members are back in person, but not all. So we're a little bit of steps at a time. But Chris, if you want to speak to that, I mean, I think the audio is the most difficult thing.
Yeah. Again, just speaking in terms of logistically, the venue that we would hope that we would host it, it's working right now with the amount of in-person attendees that we have at the meetings. Our members of our administrative team, members of our board. If we were to bring that into another location, try to replicate it, try to grow the attendance, there are certain technical aspects that would need to be accounted for. It's not impossible that we couldn't do it. We would just need some time to look at it a little bit further, see what equipment would be needed in addition to what we have, and to plan it out and test it and make sure that it's in a proper working order. It's not something that's off the table. It's something that we've started to look at, and we almost had a trial run. I want to say last month at one point we also had a trial run where we did it in the High School North media center. And we did run into some audio concerns. So, figuring out how to get past those hurdles, not impossible. It would just take some time to really plan it out.
And there's also some other logistics. You definitely have to limit the number of, community members that were allowed in, and then what happens if more show up, then we're allowed in. Like there's just things that we've been talking about it, obviously, because we know all of we know all the hurdles that we have to jump through, and we're working it out.
Right, and like I said, that's why it's best to just give it some time. Let's get the kids all back in school. And I'm sure a day's gonna come sooner than later that we're all able to meet in person again.
Yep.
So, the other hurdle actually is when doing it in person and virtual, do we all have to have laptops that we're all going back and forth like we're doing right now? Could we do it like the way Chris Rotolo has it, that we're all in one room? So it's very hard. And I think we just corrected our audio issue that we did last week at a meeting, and I think it's working very well. Now let's move on from there, I think.
All right, terrific. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Jackie. Let's turn it over to the Middletown Friends of Diverse Learners. This meeting, we have Vera joining us.
Hi, everybody. I'm representing MTFODL today. So I'm going to read their points that they wanted to get across. We've heard from some very appreciative parents whose students are in person for full day for special ed. They have reported that the transition to full day has gone well. There were certainly a few tired kids after the first day or two, getting used to a full day, but overall, we've been getting some good comments back. Extended school year, or ESY, will be July 6th through August 6th from 8:30 to 12:30. This year, ESY will be going Monday to Friday. The elementary program will be at Harmony, and middle school will be at Thorne. We understand the district has hired an education consultant to promote equitable and inclusive school practices and curriculum. Only one professional responded to the RFP at a rate of $720 per hour. As these funds have historically been used to directly support students, we hope that the IDEA funds are used wisely over this 3-year period to resolve any issues and support the civil rights of our students. MTFODL will also be hosting a presentation on the New Jersey Dyslexia Handbook, which may be useful for anyone whose students struggle with reading issues. The handbook provides information on challenges associated with reading, how to screen and assess reading disabilities, and the best practices for supporting identified students. The event is on Zoom on Monday, March 15th, 7 to 9 p.m. And we'd appreciate your help in getting word out to parents. We are also looking forward to co-hosting an inclusion presentation with the district later this spring to discuss the benefits of inclusion, review the progress that's been made with NJCIE grants, future plans and concerns of teachers and parents. And we have just started the initial phases of designing a website with the help of a high school South student and the graphics design teacher. So we're excited to see where that leads. Thank you.
Thank you, Vera. Thank you very much. There's a question in the chat about the fund days, and that would be interesting to hear some perspective on. Are we going to come up with some interesting and creative way to do fun day this year for the kids?
I could speak to a little bit of that. Most of us at the elementary level have spoken to or begin discussions with the PTOs or PTAs. A lot of it is grounded in the guidelines that we have to follow, but I would be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to all the PTOs and PTAs for being creative this year and getting and bringing in community involvement in this environment. They've done a phenomenal job. We're continuing to look at it. It's one of those types of events, kind of like even a graduation or moving up ceremony, whatever you want to call it, where we're going to try to plan for it and hope that restrictions ease up a little bit. But it obviously is determined by a higher power than anyone in this room. So we certainly want to move forward with those things because they're important milestones that I'm sure everyone sitting here, you can remember a fun day that you had at elementary school one time in your life. So we certainly would like to do it. Obviously, those discussions usually, even in a normal year, start about this time anyway. So we just have a magnifying glass on them to see how can we do it in a creative way, whether it be virtual or hybrid or whatever it can be. But we have begun those discussions.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Paulson. Danielle, did you have your hand up, or is that from before? I don't know how to tell.
No, that was from before.
Okay. Well, Danielle, you do run the President's Council, correct? I mean, are you still doing
Yes,
that?
we had a meeting in November. We haven't had a meeting since. We're looking. I was actually going to meet Dr. Mary Ellen today. We're looking probably for April sometime, so we can talk about graduations and moving ups and sharing ideas with the PTA presidents.
Okay, so maybe this would be a good forum for a discussion about the fun day as well. Teresa Reardon put in her email in the chat. So if anybody is looking to continue the discussion, she's more than willing to talk and collaborate with you about ideas that you may have about how the fun day could work a little better this year than it did last year. Anyhow. So
and they can also have ongoing discussions on the MTPS President's Council page. A lot of the, if anybody is a president or vice president isn't on the page, just request to join. And there's a lot of discussions on what's going on there.
Oh, Danielle, do you want to share the Facebook link in the chat?
If I knew how to do that,
Can you?
I'll try.
Okay. All right, it's rounding up to about 10:38. Are there any other questions before we close our March meeting of the Parent Information Committee? All right, well, thank you so very, very much for taking time out of your day, everyone. I appreciate the representatives and the administration folks taking a minute or two and coming out. If Danielle can't figure out how to do the Facebook thing, we will definitely share that in the minutes on the agenda as well as Teresa's email. We'll make sure that gets put back in there too. Okay, thank you very much. Happy spring, everybody. The next time I see you, it'll be April. So be well, be safe, and we'll talk to you next month. Take care.